She left me for my best friend, but she never knew I was quietly building a fortune without her. I used to believe that marriages didn't collapse overnight, that they cracked slowly, like ice under pressure, until one day you realized you'd been standing on thin glass all along. But the night my world shattered, there were no warning. Tremors. Just a single sentence that split my life into before and after. It happened in the most ordinary setting, our dining table. Sophia sat across from me, legs crossed, her eyes glued to the glowing screen of her phone. She wasn't even nervous. Not a frown, not a flicker of hesitation. When she finally looked up, her voice carried the weight of a gavel. "Daniel, I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce." No build-up. No gentle explanation. Just a cold, surgical strike. For a second, I thought I had misheard. I set my fork down, the clink against the plate louder than her words. "Excuse me?" I asked, though deep inside I already knew she meant it. "I said I want a divorce," she repeated, this time slower, as if I were a child too dim to understand. Her tone was flat, but her eyes burned with a strange kind of triumph. I should have exploded, yelled, pleaded, something. But instead, I found myself studying her like a stranger across a courtroom. The calm in my voice surprised even me. "Why?" She leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and delivered her verdict. "Because I can't keep living like this. I need someone who actually works, someone who contributes. You're not the man I thought I married." That one stung not because it was true, but because of how blind she had been. For 8 years, I had built something solid. My company wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. My earnings had quietly climbed into the upper 6 figures. $750,000 last year alone. Enough to buy the house we lived in twice over. Enough to give her the kind of life most people could only dream of. But Sophia had never asked. She never wanted to know. To her, my work was invisible, my value unmeasurable, and so she sat there, convinced she was married to a man who had nothing to offer. I felt something shift inside me then. Not sorrow, not rage, something colder. A realization that this wasn't about money at all. It was about perception, about control, about a woman who had already decided she wanted more and believed she'd found it somewhere else. "All right," I said at last, my voice steady. "If that's what you want, I won't stop you." Her lips curled in that self-satisfied smile I had grown to despise. She thought she'd won. She thought I was defeated. But as I pushed back my chair and rose from the table, one thought rang. Louder than all the others. Sophia wasn't leaving because she lacked comfort. She was leaving because she had already found comfort in someone else. And though I didn't know it yet, that someone was the man I once trusted like a brother. After that night, the air in our house changed. It wasn't a home anymore, it was a waiting room. Every sound felt sharper, every silence heavier, as if both of us were holding our breath until the clock ran out on our marriage. That's when I started hearing his name. It slipped into conversation with a casual ease, but I felt its weight every time it landed. Ethan recommended that new wine bar. Ethan said I should try this new workout. Ethan thinks we should repaint the living room. At first, I brushed it off. Ethan had been my best friend for over a decade. We built our lives side by side, celebrated milestones together. He was supposed to be my brother in everything but blood. So I told myself it was harmless, just friends, just suggestions. Nothing more, but denial only works until the evidence piles too high. It was the little things that betrayed her. The way her face lit up when a text buzzed across her phone, only for her to tilt the screen away from me. The faint perfume she wore to casual lunches, the kind she never bothered with when she was just meeting coworkers. The laughter that echoed in our hallway when she came home, laughter that didn't belong to me anymore. The first real crack in my denial came one Saturday afternoon. She walked in from lunch with Ethan, her cheeks flushed, her eyes sparkling with a brightness I hadn't seen directed at me in years. I asked what was so funny. She waved me off, almost irritated. "It's just something Ethan said." "You wouldn't get it." I wouldn't get it. Those 3 words cut deeper than "I want a divorce." Because in that moment, I realized I was no longer a part of her world. I was standing outside of it, peering through the glass while someone else sat in my chair. I told myself I needed proof before I accused her. But proof was everywhere if I was willing to look. Texts she locked the second I walked into the room. New dresses hanging in her closet, worn only on nights she had plans with friends. And always the name Ethan lingering in the background like a ghost I couldn't banish. I remember lying awake at night, listening to her typing on her phone in the dark. Her laughter, soft and secretive, would drift across the bed. I wanted to roll over, to demand answers. But what good would it do? She'd deny it. She'd call me paranoid, accuse me of overthinking. That word, the favorite weapon of the guilty. overthinking. So I stayed silent. I let her believe I was too blind, too wrapped up in my own work to notice. I wore the mask of the oblivious husband, because patience is often sharper than confrontation. If she thought she had the upper hand, I would let her enjoy the illusion. Inside, I was already preparing, taking mental notes, filing away each careless mistake she made. Every smirk, every whispered name, every late-night text, they weren't just betrayals. They were ammunition. What I didn't know then was that the quiet war I waged within myself would soon spill into the open. Because one evening, Ethan himself walked through my front door uninvited, grinning as if nothing had changed. And that was when the game truly began. The night Ethan showed up, I was packing a suitcase in silence. Just a few essentials, nothing permanent. Sophia had made it clear she wanted me gone, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of watching me argue. The zipper on the suitcase had barely closed when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there he was, Ethan, my best friend, my so-called brother. He strolled inside without waiting for permission, his smile wide, his posture relaxed, as though he still belonged in my home. "Daniel, my man," he said, clapping me on the shoulder like old times. "Heard you're moving out. Thought I'd swing by, see if you needed a hand." I stood frozen for a moment, studying his face. He wasn't just confident. He was glowing. The kind of glow a man carries when he thinks he's won. "I don't need help," I said, my tone sharper than I intended, but he lingered, leaning casually against the wall, his eyes roaming the house as though he were already measuring it. For himself. "Tough times, huh? But you'll bounce back. Things happen. Things happen." He said it with a shrug, as if my marriage collapsing, my trust being burned to ash, was nothing more than a flat tire on the side of the road. I took a step closer, forcing him to meet my eyes. "Yes, Ethan, things do happen. And sometimes they come back to bite you." For the first time, his grin faltered. Just a flicker, but I caught it. I could have confronted him right then. I could have thrown every suspicion, every shred of evidence in his face. But I didn't, because confrontation is a gift, and neither of them deserved it. Confrontation gives the guilty a chance to justify, to twist, to lie. I wasn't going to hand them that weapon. So I turned away, picked up my suitcase, and walked past him. My silence pressed heavier than any accusation. "You've always been a cool guy, Daniel," he muttered awkwardly, trying to fill the void. "No hard feelings, right?" I didn't answer. I didn't even look at him. Silence was my answer, and it rattled him more than anger ever could. That night, as I lay on the bed that would soon no longer be mine, I replayed his smirk, his casual tone, the way he spoke like a man staking his claim. It confirmed what I already knew. Ethan wasn't just a friend who crossed a line. He was the replacement. The man Sophia had chosen before she ever asked for divorce papers, but I wasn't going to fight him. Not yet, because a fight would give them closure. A fight would make me look desperate. And desperation was exactly what they expected. No, I would give them something else: patience. Let them believe they had won. Let them bask in their illusion of victory. While they celebrated, I would be planning. And when the time came, I wouldn't need to confront them at all. I would let the truth do the talking. The courthouse smelled like old paper and stale coffee, the kind of place where lives get dissected into contracts and signatures. When I walked in, Sophia was already there, sitting upright with that familiar smirk tugging at her lips. She had dressed as if this were a victory parade rather than the burial of our marriage-tailored dress, polished heels, and a confidence that reeked of arrogance. And just outside the courtroom doors, I spotted Ethan. He didn't dare step inside, but his presence was enough. He leaned against the wall, pretending to scroll through his phone, though I could feel his eyes on me. A shadow waiting to take my place. When Sophia looked up and met my gaze, her words were rehearsed, sharp as glass. "Let's not drag this out, Daniel. The faster we finish, the better for both of us." I nodded. Agreed. She blinked, caught off guard. She had expected resistance, maybe even begging. But I gave her nothing. The lawyer slid the papers across the table. Sophia wanted the house. She wanted the furniture. She wanted a portion of what she believed was my modest savings. Her pen hovered, waiting for me to fight. But I simply picked up mine, signed where I needed to, and pushed the documents back without hesitation. "You're okay with all this?" she asked finally, her voice betraying a hint of disbelief. "Why wouldn't I be?" I replied evenly. "It's just stuff. Sophia, you can have it." For a moment, I saw her mask slip. Confusion flickered in her eyes, quickly replaced by smug satisfaction. She thought my calm meant defeat. She thought she had stripped me bare. What she didn't know, and what I had no intention of telling her, was that the house wasn't mine. To begin with, it was a rental, a stepping stone I had used when my company was just getting off the ground. And the bank account she thought she was cutting into? It held little more than pocket change compared to the investments, the offshore accounts, the growing empire she had never bothered to ask about. Let her take the hollow prize. The real wealth was untouchable, hidden in plain sight, protected by her ignorance. When the final signature was laid down, Sophia leaned back in her chair with a smile of triumph. "Well, I'm glad we could handle this like adults," she said, her tone patronizing. I met her gaze, biting back a laugh. Handle this like adults? No, she had played a game of theft and betrayal, and she thought she'd won. But in reality, she had just traded a king's fortune for a rented house and a pile of furniture she could never afford to keep. A week later, I carried the last of my belongings out the door. I left her everything she'd demanded: every table, every painting, every little thing she had convinced herself mattered. She could decorate her fantasy life with trophies of victory. But trophies can't pay bills, and illusions don't last. As I pulled away from the driveway, I glanced once at the house. Ethan was there already, unloading boxes, puffed up like a man who thought he had conquered something grand. Sophia stood beside him, smiling, radiant, proud. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel sorrow. What I felt was clarity. They believed they had buried me, but all they had done was hand me the shovel to bury them instead, because this wasn't the end of a marriage. This was the beginning of their downfall. Sophia and Ethan didn't waste a second stepping into the life they thought they'd stolen. Within days of the divorce, they moved into the house as if it had always been theirs. The curtains I had chosen, the furniture I had paid for, even the wine glasses from our wedding registry, suddenly, they were trophies of their so-called victory. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. They threw their first dinner party within a week, parading guests through the rooms I had once called my own. I saw the photos online later, Sophia glowing in a cocktail dress, Ethan laughing too loudly with a glass of champagne in hand. They Wanted the world to see how radiant, how unstoppable, how perfect their love was. But perfection is a fragile mask. The first cracks appeared quietly. A friend of mine who attended one of those parties told me how the electricity cut out halfway through the evening. Guests sat in darkness while Ethan scrambled, sweating, insisting it was just a mix-up with the bill. No one believed him. Then came the whispers. Sophia, who once prided herself on elegance, had started borrowing outfits from friends, showing up in the same dress 2 weekends in a row. Ethan, the man who always wanted to impress, arrived at gatherings in flashy cars that were later revealed to be rentals. They were trying to maintain a lifestyle they couldn't afford, and everyone around them could smell the desperation. Meanwhile, I had quietly moved into my new world. A penthouse in the city with glass walls that framed the skyline like a painting. It was modern, clean, mine. No ghosts lingered in those walls. At night, as I sipped whiskey on the balcony, I sometimes thought about them back in that house, 2 people clinging to a dream built on lies, struggling to keep it alive. What they didn't realize was that fantasy has a price. And sooner or later, the bill always comes due. I didn't have to chase information about Sophia and Ethan. It came to me like a current, carried through friends, colleagues, even old neighbors. Betrayal has a way of echoing louder than success. And theirs was beginning to sound like a broken record. The first whisper reached me over coffee with a mutual acquaintance. She leaned across the table, lowering her voice as if we were plotting something scandalous. "Daniel, you won't believe this. They had a dinner party last weekend. The lights went out halfway through. Power shut off completely. Turns out, they hadn't paid the utility bill in 2 months." I smiled into my cup, saying nothing. Another voice joined the chorus a week later. A neighbor called, her tone half amusement, half pity. "They're behind on rent, Daniel. The landlord came knocking yesterday, banging on the door loud enough for the whole street to hear. 3 months past due from what I heard. 3 months. The same house Sophia had fought so hard to claim in the divorce, the one she believed was her crown jewel, was now a burden she couldn't carry. But it didn't stop there. At social gatherings, people began noticing the cracks in their perfect image. Sophia still dressed to impress, but her designer gowns had been replaced with cheaper imitations, her jewelry borrowed or fake. Ethan, once so eager to flaunt his confidence, had become restless, his laugh forced, his stories recycled. One friend told me she overheard an argument between them outside a restaurant. "They were shouting in the parking lot," she said. Almost whispering. People stared. Sophia accused him of wasting money. Ethan accused her of being ungrateful. It was ugly. Their dream life had become gossip fodder, a cautionary tale passed around with smirks and knowing glances. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. Their downfall was writing itself. While their names circulated in hushed conversations, mine was being spoken in different rooms, boardrooms, conferences, business dinners. Deals were closing, opportunities opening. The same circles that mocked them praised me, though I never sought the attention. Success has its own voice, quiet but undeniable. And I had learned that silence often speaks louder than spectacle. Each whisper I heard about Sophia and Ethan wasn't just proof of their decline. It was confirmation that patience had been the sharpest weapon I could wield. I hadn't confronted them, hadn't exposed them, hadn't even spoken their names aloud. And still, their perfect fantasy was rotting from the inside. But whispers are just the beginning. They signal the storm before it breaks. And soon, the storm would find its way directly to my door. The first message came on a Tuesday evening. I had just wrapped up a meeting and was staring out at the city skyline from my balcony when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen froze. Me for a moment, Sophia. Her text was short. "Hi Daniel, I hope you're doing well." For a while, I just stared at it. My ex-wife, the woman who had gutted our marriage, The woman who had mocked me as useless while she ran into Ethan's arms now. She was checking in. I typed back a single line, "Things are going great." "Business is booming." Her reply came almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting. "That's good. Things are a little tight for us, but we're managing. Managing. That word clung to the screen. Like desperation dressed in politeness. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, but the messages kept coming. A few days later, "Daniel, just wondering if we could catch up sometime. It'd be nice to talk." Another week. "I know things ended badly, but I could really use a friend right now. A friend." She wanted to reduce me to a safety net, a backup plan, after throwing me away. I ignored most of them, replying once or twice with clipped politeness, giving her nothing to hold on to. And the less I gave, the more desperate she became. Then the calls began. At first, I let them ring out, her name lighting up my screen like a ghost I refused to answer. But one night, curiosity got the better of me. I picked up. Her voice was tight, trembling at the edges. "Daniel, we need to talk." "About what?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. "About everything. About Brian, about us. Us." I almost laughed. "Sophia, there is no us. That ended the day you handed me those divorce papers. What's this really about?" She hesitated, and for a moment, the facade cracked. "We're struggling. Daniel, things haven't been easy. I thought maybe you could help. Just a little loan, until we get back on our feet." A loan. From the man she'd abandoned. From the husband she had humiliated. I let the silence stretch until she began to fidget on the line. Finally I said, "You left me because you thought I wasn't good enough, that I didn't work hard enough. Now you want me to fix the mess you chose? Not a chance." Her tone sharpened. "You don't have to be cruel." "I'm not being cruel," I replied. "I'm being honest. You wanted freedom, Sophia. Enjoy it." And I hung up. It didn't stop there. She started showing up in person. Once she appeared outside my office, eyes red, hair unkempt, clutching her purse like it was the last thing she owned. She slipped past my assistant, stormed into my office, and begged, "Daniel, please, we're drowning. Just help us this once. I know I hurt you, but you don't have to watch me suffer." I leaned back in my chair, folded my arms, and let her speak. Then calmly I said, "Desperation doesn't erase betrayal. You chose Ethan. You chose this life. Now live with it." Her face fell. Anger, shame, and something like regret all collided in her expression. And then she left for weeks. The cycle continued: messages, calls, appearances, each one more frantic than the last. But the more she begged, the calmer I became. Because I had finally realized something. Revenge doesn't always require action. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is silence, the kind that forces the guilty to hear their own downfall echo back at them. But Sophia wasn't the only one who came crawling. Soon, Ethan himself would step out of the shadows. And that encounter would strip the last pieces of their dignity away. It was almost poetic, the way karma chose its moment. I had ignored Sophia's calls for weeks, shut down her pleas at my office, and thought perhaps the noise had finally died down. But then Ethan appeared, my former best friend, the man who thought he had stolen both my wife and my life. He didn't come swaggering this time. He looked smaller somehow, shoulders hunched, jaw tight, eyes restless. He waited in the lobby of my building, shifting his weight from one foot to the other like a man standing on broken glass. When I stepped out of the elevator, he tried to smile. "Daniel, hey man, can we talk?" "Just 5 minutes." I said nothing, just let him into a side room near the lobby. I wanted to hear what rock bottom sounded like. He started with excuses. "Listen, I know things got messy. Mistakes were made, okay? But Sophia and I, we're in a rough spot. She said you wouldn't help, but I thought maybe man to man." "To man?" I cut him off, my voice low. You mean the way you stood by me for years, then slid into my marriage behind my back? That kind of man-to-man? He flinched, but pushed forward. We just need a loan, something small. I'll pay you back. You know I would. I almost laughed. Ethan, the man who had never paid back anything in his life, was standing here begging for a handout. His suit was wrinkled, his watch cheap. His confidence gone. No, I said simply. You made your bed, Ethan. Lie in it. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched. You don't have to be an ass about it. I stepped closer until he had no choice but to look me in the eye. You don't get to lecture me on cruelty. You betrayed me, Ethan. You betrayed a brother. And now you want me to save you? You're not just a liar, you're a fool. For a moment, I thought he might swing at me. But then his shoulders sagged. He muttered something under his breath and walked out, leaving the stench of desperation. Behind him, I thought that was the end of it until a week later, I got another call. Not from Ethan, from a friend of mine who couldn't wait to spill the news. Daniel, you're going to love this, she said, barely able to contain her laughter. Sophia caught Ethan cheating. Some girl from his new job. Younger, prettier. And she didn't care that he already had someone. I leaned back in my chair, letting the irony wash over me. Ethan, the man who had stolen my wife, had turned around and betrayed her in the exact same way. The fallout was spectacular. Sophia confronted him in public at a cafe of all places. She screamed, hurled her drink in his face, accused him of ruining her life. People recorded it on their phones, and within hours, the video was circulating through the very social circles Sophia once tried so hard to impress. The queen had been dethroned, and her king was a fraud. Ethan moved out shortly after chasing his fling. But she dropped him within weeks, and he wound up sleeping on friends' couches, jobless and broke. Sophia, left behind in a crumbling apartment with bills she couldn't pay, had no one left to blame but herself. I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Because some betrayals come back not once, but twice. And this time, karma had done my work for me. Rock bottom doesn't announce itself. It creeps in slowly until one day, you look around and realize the walls have caved in. For Sophia, it came on an ordinary afternoon in the most ordinary place. The grocery store. I was there picking up a few things, coffee, fresh bread, nothing important. And that's when I saw her. She was pushing a half-empty cart, her hair tied back in a messy knot, her makeup smudged, her once polished appearance replaced by exhaustion. Instead of the designer labels she used to flaunt, her cart was filled with store brands, boxes dented from the clearance shelf. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. This wasn't the Sophia who had paraded around in cocktail dresses and diamond earrings. This was someone else entirely, someone stripped bare. She noticed me before I spoke. Her eyes widened, and for just a moment, I saw the flicker of who she used to be. Then it vanished, replaced by shame. Daniel, she said softly, her voice carrying none of the arrogance it once had. I gave her a polite nod. Sophia. We stood there in the aisle, surrounded by fluorescent lights and strangers passing by. She opened her mouth as if to explain, but no words came. Her lips trembled, her eyes darted away. I hope you're doing well, I said finally, keeping my tone calm, neutral. She nodded too quickly, muttered, "You too," and pushed her cart past me without another word. I watched her go. The woman who once demanded more, who once believed she deserved better, now reduced to bargain. Groceries and silence. For years she had tried to convince me I was the weak one, the one holding her back. And yet, here we were, the roles reversed. The truth undeniable. It would have been easy to feel triumph, to revel in her collapse. But what I felt was something more complicated. Satisfaction, yes, but also pity. Because no matter how much she had hurt me, this wasn't the life she thought she was fighting for. This was the prison she had built with her own hands. That night, I sat on my balcony, city lights stretching out beneath me, and thought about what I'd seen. Sophia had fallen as far as she could go. Ethan was gone, her family distant, her friends embarrassed to be near her. She had gambled everything and lost it all, but for me, this wasn't just about her downfall. It was about clarity. Betrayal may break you in the moment, but in the long run, it reveals who people really are. And as I stared out over the skyline, I realized I had already won, not by destroying her, but by surviving her. People always say betrayal destroys you, that it shatters trust, poisons love, and leaves you hollow. And for a time I believed that. The night Sophia asked for a divorce, the night Ethan walked into my house like he owned it, I thought I'd been broken beyond repair. But sitting here now looking back, I realized betrayal didn't destroy me. It revealed me. It showed me the limits of my patience, the strength of my silence, the power of walking away without ever looking back. It forced me to stop defining myself by someone else's validation and start building a life that was entirely my own. I think about Sophia sometimes, not with longing, not with hatred, but with a kind of distant pity. She had everything she thought she wanted and still managed to lose it all. She mistook comfort for weakness, loyalty for stagnation, and traded stability for chaos. And when the fantasy collapsed, there was nothing left for her to stand on. As for Ethan, his story was even simpler. A man who built his life on charm and shortcuts, convinced that betrayal was a path to happiness. But betrayal has a way of folding back on itself. And he ended up with less than nothing, his dignity scattered, his reputation in ruins, his name whispered with mockery instead of respect. Meanwhile, I thrived. Not because I chased revenge, not because I sought to punish them, but because I refused to let their choices dictate my future. I invested in my work. I poured myself into friendships that mattered. I rebuilt piece by piece until I stood taller than before. My income grew, my influence expanded, and my life became something they could only watch from a distance. That's the thing about betrayal. It burns down the house you thought was safe. But in the ashes, you're given a choice. Live among the ruins or build something stronger. I chose to build. And as for Sophia and Ethan, they thought they had upgraded, that leaving me behind was their ticket to freedom. But some upgrades come with viruses, and I deleted them from my life for good. This wasn't the story of my downfall. It was the story of my rebirth. In the end, betrayal didn't break me, it freed me. Sophia and Ethan destroyed themselves without me lifting a finger, and I built a life stronger than anything I had before. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't shouting or fighting. It's moving forward quietly while the ones who hurt you fall apart behind you. If this story kept you hooked, don't forget to hit that like button, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this, raw, dramatic, and unforgettable.